The invitation arrived 3 months before the wedding. Cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Emma Hartley and Richard Chen request the honor of your presence. I ran my fingers over the raised letters, feeling the weight of obligation pressing down on my shoulders. My sister Emma was getting married, and somehow, I was already dreading it. The note tucked inside the formal invitation was written in Emma's looping handwriting. Maya, I've seated you at table 17. It'll be perfect. Trust me. Can't wait to celebrate with you. 3 exclamation points. Emma always used excessive punctuation when she was lying or hiding something. I should have known then. I should have seen the warning signs. But I didn't. Because despite everything, despite the years of being compared to my perfect older sister, despite always coming in second place in our parents' eyes, I wanted to believe that Emma still cared about me. That on her wedding day, she'd remember I was her sister, her only sibling, and treat me accordingly. I was so incredibly naive. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. The day of the wedding arrived with the kind of perfect June weather that seemed specially ordered for the occasion. Clear blue skies, a gentle breeze, temperature hovering at a comfortable 75 degrees. Even the universe was bending to Emma's will. I'd spent an embarrassing amount of money on my dress, a deep emerald silk that my best friend Jenna swore made me look stunning. I'd gotten my hair professionally done, soft waves cascading down my back. I'd even splurged on expensive makeup, determined to look like I belonged in Emma's world of country clubs and society weddings. My parents barely glanced at me when I arrived at the venue, a sprawling estate with manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most people's mortgages. Mom was fussing over Emma, who looked admittedly breathtaking in a designer gown that had been featured in 3 bridal magazines. Dad was glad handing the groom's family, already working the room like the corporate lawyer he was. Maya. Emma air-kissed near my cheeks, careful not to smudge her makeup. You made it. You look nice. Nice. The word Emma used when she meant adequate but forgettable. You look beautiful, Em, I said, and meant it. Emma had always been beautiful, blonde where I was dark-haired, willowy where I was curvier, effortlessly graceful where I had to work for every ounce of poise. Table 17, remember? Emma said, already turning away to greet someone more important. You'll love it there. The ceremony was lovely, I suppose. I watched from my assigned seat in the 5th row, not the front row with family, but close enough to make it clear I was related while still maintaining distance. I watched Emma glide down the aisle on Dad's arm, watched him beam at her with pride I'd rarely seen directed at me. I watched Richard gaze at my sister like she hung the moon and stars. I did not cry, though part of me wanted to. Not from happiness, but from the hollow ache of invisibility. The reception was held in a grand ballroom that had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, candlelight dancing off golden accents. A band played soft jazz as guests filtered in, exclaiming over the beauty of it all. I found table 17, and my stomach dropped. It was tucked in the far back corner of the room, partially hidden behind a decorative pillar. Not near the bridal party tables, not near the family tables, not even near the respectable middle ground tables where Emma's college friends and Richard's colleagues were seated. Table 17 was where you put the people you had to invite but didn't actually want at your wedding. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that every other chair at the table had a small card on it, reserved. Every single chair except mine. I stood there, my expensive dress suddenly feeling like a costume, my professionally styled hair a joke. Emma had seated me at a table by myself. Alone. At my own sister's wedding, people began to notice. I could feel their eyes, their whispered comments. Is that the bride's sister? Why is she sitting alone? How odd. Humiliation burned through me like acid. I wanted to leave, to run out of there and never look back. But that would cause a scene, would embarrass Emma on her perfect day, and God forbid I do anything to tarnish Emma's moment. I sat down mechanically, arranging my face into what I hoped was a neutral expression. I focused on the centerpiece. More white roses, because apparently there was no such thing as too many white roses at this wedding. This is absolutely ridiculous. The voice was male, deep, and laced with barely controlled anger. I looked up to find a man standing beside my table, staring at the reserved signs with obvious disgust. He was probably in his early 30s, tall and lean, with dark hair and startling blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His tuxedo was impeccably tailored, and he carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from old money or new success, possibly both. "Excuse me?" I managed. He gestured at the table. "This seating arrangement, it's deliberately cruel." His eyes met mine, and I saw genuine sympathy there. "You're Maya, aren't you? The bride's sister?" I nodded, unsure where this was going. "James Holloway," he introduced himself, "friend of the groom's family. I helped with some of the wedding planning coordination." His jaw tightened. "I had no idea Emma was going to do this to you. When I saw the final seating chart this morning, I was appalled. But by then it was too late to change anything without causing chaos." "It's fine," I lied automatically, the way I'd learned to lie about so many things where Emma was concerned. "It's not fine," James said firmly. He pulled out the chair next to mine and sat down, removing the reserved sign and crumpling it in his hand. "No one's actually assigned to this table. Emma just put those signs here to make sure you'd be alone. Something about teaching you not to overshadow the bride." The words hit me like a physical blow. She said that? To her wedding planner, yes. I overheard them. James's expression was grim. "I'm sorry. You deserve to know the truth." Around us, the reception was starting. Champagne was flowing, the band was playing, and people were laughing and celebrating. And I was sitting at the reject table learning that my sister had deliberately orchestrated my humiliation. Something inside me snapped. Why would she think I'd overshadow her? I heard myself asking. She's always been the pretty one, the successful one, the favorite. I'm just Maya, the forgettable sister who became a teacher instead of a lawyer, who drives a 10-year-old Honda instead of a Mercedes, who's still single at 28 instead of marrying a doctor. James studied me for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "I have an idea. It's probably petty, and you're welcome to say no, but I think it would serve your sister right." "What kind of idea?" "Act like you're with me," he said simply. "For the rest of the night. Let everyone think you brought a date. An impressive date who can't keep his hands off you. Let them wonder why Emma stuck her sister and her sister's handsome boyfriend in the back corner. Trust me, the whispers will reach her, and she'll be furious." I should have said no. I should have taken the high road, been the bigger person, all those noble things people always expect from the ones who've been wronged. But I was tired of being noble, tired of being invisible, tired of being treated like I was less than Emma in every possible way. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." James's smile was wolfish. "Excellent. First rule, we need to look completely smitten with each other. Can you pull that off?" "I'm a middle school drama teacher," I said, feeling a spark of something I hadn't felt in years: power. "I think I can manage." And just like that, James Holloway and I became the most convincing fake couple at Emma Hartley's wedding. It started small. James moved his chair closer to mine, angling his body toward me in a way that suggested intimate conversation. He laughed at something I said, reaching out to touch my hand. To anyone watching, we looked like two people completely absorbed in each other. "Your sister is looking over here," James murmured, his lips close to my ear in a way that probably looked romantic but was really just strategic. "She looks confused?" "Good," I said, surprised by the venom in my voice. "Now she's talking to your mother. Your mother is also looking over here, and she looks very interested." I risked a glance. Mom was indeed staring at our table, her eyebrows raised in obvious surprise. She said something to Emma, who shook her head dismissively, but I could see the irritation in my sister's expression even from across the room. "This is working," I said, feeling a flutter of excitement that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with the fact that James was actually quite attractive when he smiled. "We're just getting started," James promised. "When dinner is served, I'm going to feed you a bite of my dessert." Very romantic, very noticeable. "Isn't that a little over the top?" "Your sister seated you alone at your own family wedding," James said flatly. "There's no such thing as over the top here." He had a point. Dinner was served, and James played his part beautifully. He made sure our wine glasses were never empty, leaned in to whisper comments that made me laugh genuinely, and yes, fed me a bite of the chocolate torte with an intimacy that had several nearby tables watching with interest. "The groom's mother is asking someone who you're with," James reported, his eyes tracking the room with the precision of a general surveying a battlefield. "Now she's walking over to Emma. Emma is definitely trying to downplay this, but she keeps looking over here." "How did you end up at this wedding anyway?" I asked, realizing I knew nothing about this man who was currently pretending to be infatuated with me. "Richard and I went to medical school together," James explained. "I'm a trauma surgeon at Mass General. Richard wanted me to be a groomsman, but I had to decline because of my surgery schedule. Couldn't guarantee I'd make the bachelor party and rehearsal dinner. So I'm just a regular guest, which actually works out better for our purposes. No assigned seating, no specific responsibilities. I can do whatever I want, including rescuing pathetic sisters who get humiliated by the bride." "You're not pathetic," James said, and his voice carried a weight that made me believe he meant it. "You're kind, which is different. Your sister took advantage of that kindness. That's on her, not you." I felt something shift in my chest. When was the last time someone had seen me as kind rather than weak? As generous rather than a doormat? "When does the real revenge start?" I asked. James's smile turned predatory. "During the speeches. Trust me." I didn't understand until the best man stood up to give his toast. He was Richard's brother, a cardiologist who apparently thought he was much funnier than he actually was. The speech was the usual mix of embarrassing childhood stories and sincere well wishes. But then he said something that made everyone laugh. "And Emma, thank you for putting up with our family. I know we can be overwhelming. Richard told me you specifically designed the seating chart to make sure everyone felt welcome and comfortable." The irony was exquisite. Emma smiled graciously, accepting the compliment for her thoughtful hosting while I sat at my isolated table, living proof of her cruelty. That's when James stood up. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice carrying easily across the room. The best man looked startled, and gradually the ballroom fell silent. All eyes turned to our corner table. "I'm sorry to interrupt," James continued, not sounding sorry at all. "But I wanted to propose a toast to Maya Hartley, the bride's sister." Emma's face went pale. I felt my heart hammering against my ribs. "I've only known Maya for a few hours," James said, his voice warm and genuine. "But in that time, I've learned that she's a teacher who works with inner-city kids, that she volunteers at a literacy program on weekends, and that she drove 8 hours through a snowstorm last year to be at her sister's engagement party." He turned to look directly at me, his expression tender. And I've learned that she's the kind of person who, when deliberately humiliated, responds with grace and dignity, instead of causing a scene. The room was deadly quiet. People were starting to understand what he was implying. So here's to Maya. James raised his glass. The best person in this room, bar none. Emma, you're a beautiful bride, but you're a terrible sister. And everyone here now knows it. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Emma looked like she'd been slapped. Mom's mouth was hanging open. Dad was halfway out of his chair, his face turning red. Richard looked confused, glancing between his new wife and my table with growing understanding. Then the whispers started, a low murmur that swept through the room like wildfire. People were looking at the isolated table, at the reserved signs James had stacked in the center, at me sitting alone in the corner while Emma's friends occupied the good tables. "You absolute bastard," Emma hissed, abandoning all pretense of bridal composure as she stormed toward our table. "How dare you? This is my wedding." "And she's your sister," James said calmly. "Did you really think no one would notice what you did to her?" "This is none of your business, James," Richard said, appearing at Emma's side. But he looked uncomfortable, like he was just now realizing what his bride had done. "You're right," James agreed. "But I make it my business when I see cruelty masquerading as celebration." "Maya." Mom had materialized beside the table, her voice tight. "Can I speak with you? Outside?" I looked at my mother. This woman who had always favored Emma, who had always made excuses for her golden child while expecting me to understand, to be reasonable, to not make waves. "No," I said simply. "I don't think so." "Maya Elizabeth Hartley." "You knew," I interrupted, my voice shaking but clear. "You knew what Emma did with the seating chart. You saw me sitting here alone, and you didn't say anything. You didn't check on me. You didn't ask if I was okay. So no, Mom, I don't want to speak with you outside. I don't want to be told to apologize for James's honesty, or to smooth things over, or to not ruin Emma's day. Her day was perfect until someone pointed out how she'd treated me. That's not my problem." My mother looked genuinely shocked. I'd never spoken to her like that before. I'd always been the good daughter, the understanding one, the one who didn't cause problems. "You ungrateful," Emma started, but Richard put a hand on her arm. "Emma, maybe we should—" "Don't you dare take her side." Emma whirled on her new husband. "I'm your wife." "And she's your sister," Richard said quietly. "Emma, love, I didn't know you'd done this. If I had—" "If you had what? You would have stopped me? I'm sick of everyone expecting me to coddle Maya. She's always been jealous of me, always trying to—" "I was trying to exist," I said, standing up. I was taller than Emma in my heels, and for once, I felt like I was looking down on her rather than up. "That's all I've ever tried to do. Exist in the same family as you without being completely erased. But you couldn't even let me have that, could you? On your wedding day, when you have everything, the perfect husband, the perfect dress, the perfect celebration, you still had to put me in my place. You had to make sure everyone knew I was less than you." "That's not—" Emma's voice cracked. "Yes, it is," I said. "And the saddest part is that I would have been happy for you. I would have celebrated your marriage, given a heartfelt toast, danced at your reception. All you had to do was treat me like a human being, like family, but you couldn't do it." The ballroom was silent except for the awkward shuffling of 300 wedding guests pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. "I think you should leave," Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I think you're right," I agreed. "Come on, James." I expected him to make an excuse, to stay at the wedding and salvage what he could of his friendship with Richard. But James stood immediately, offering me his arm like a gentleman from another era. It was a lovely ceremony, he said to Richard, completely ignoring Emma. I hope your marriage is happier than this reception. We walked out together, my hand on James's arm, our heads held high. Behind us, the whispers erupted into full conversation. Emma's perfect wedding had just become the event everyone would talk about for years, but not for the reasons she'd wanted. We made it to the parking lot before I started shaking. The adrenaline was draining out of me, leaving behind exhaustion and a confusing mix of triumph and grief. I just burned every bridge with my family, I said, my voice hollow. You didn't burn them, James said gently. They were already on fire. You just stopped pretending you couldn't see the flames. That was beautiful, by the way, what you said in there. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. James turned to face me fully. Maya, I know we just met, and this whole situation is bizarre, but I need you to know something. Every word I said in there was true. You are the best person in that room, and your sister is a fool for not seeing it. I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. I'm still alone, though. I just traded a table by myself for a whole life by myself. My family is going to ice me out completely after this. Maybe, James acknowledged, or maybe this is the catalyst that forces them to see you for who you really are. Either way, you're not alone right now. He hesitated, then said, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I don't want this to end. Tonight, I mean. I don't want to say goodbye and have this just be a weird story we tell about that one wedding. What are you suggesting? Have dinner with me. Real dinner, not wedding food. There's an incredible Italian place about 10 minutes from here. We can get out of these formal clothes, drink too much wine, and you can tell me all about who Maya Hartley really is when she's not being overshadowed by her terrible sister. I should have said no. I should have gone home, processed everything alone, dealt with my emotions in private. But I was so tired of doing what I should do. Yes, I said. Let's get Italian. That dinner changed my life. Not because James and I fell madly in love, though we did eventually start dating, and 3 years later, I'm writing this from the home we share in Boston. Not because my family immediately apologized and everything was magically fixed, though Richard did call me a week after the wedding to express his horror at what Emma had done, and my father sent an awkward email months later suggesting we have lunch sometime. No. That dinner changed my life because it was the first time I'd sat across from someone who saw me clearly and liked what they saw. James asked about my teaching, my students, my dreams. He told me about his work at the hospital, the challenges of trauma surgery, his own complicated relationship with his family. We talked for 4 hours until the restaurant staff was pointedly stacking chairs around us. Emma and I didn't speak for almost a year. When we finally did have a conversation, it was brutal and honest in a way we'd never been before. She cried. I cried. She admitted that she'd been resentful of me for being effortlessly good, while she had to work to maintain her perfect image. I told her I'd spent my entire life feeling invisible next to her light. We're not close now. We probably never will be. But we're civil. We see each other at holidays, exchange birthday texts, maintain the basic structures of sisterhood without the deeper connection. It's sad, but it's also a relief. I'm not constantly trying to earn her approval anymore. Mom still doesn't really understand what happened. She thinks I overreacted, that I should have quietly addressed the seating issue instead of making a scene. We have a polite but distant relationship now. Dad and I actually get along better than we used to. Turned out he respected my backbone once I finally showed it. As for James, he jokes that he won the wedding lottery that night. I went to celebrate Richard's marriage and found my own future wife, he says. We're engaged now, planning a wedding for next fall. The seating chart is very carefully arranged. Richard and his wife Emma will be at a nice table, close but not too close, where they'll be comfortable but not central, right where they belong. Sometimes I think about that night at Emma's wedding, about the moment I saw that isolated table and felt my heart break. It was one of the worst moments of my life, but it was also the moment I stopped accepting crumbs of affection from people who should have loved me fully. It was the moment I stood up, not just for myself, but for my right to be treated with basic human dignity. The revenge, in the end, wasn't about ruining Emma's wedding, though James's toast did become legendary in their social circle, and Emma still can't attend gatherings without someone bringing it up. The real revenge was much simpler and more profound. I stopped caring what Emma thought of me. I stopped measuring my worth against her accomplishments. I stopped making myself small so she could feel big. I learned that the best revenge against people who diminish you isn't to hurt them back. It's to walk away and build a life so full of genuine love and respect that their rejection becomes irrelevant. Though I'm not going to lie, having James call out Emma's cruelty in front of 300 guests was pretty satisfying too. Last week, Emma called me. She's pregnant, due in 4 months. She asked hesitantly if I'd be willing to be the baby's aunt. Not godmother. She's giving that role to her best friend. But aunt. Present. Involved. Family. I said yes. Because that's who I am. I'm the person who shows up, who loves imperfectly but genuinely, who believes in second chances even after profound hurt. But I'm also the person who will never again sit quietly at the reject table while others celebrate. I'm the person who knows her worth, who speaks up against injustice, who walks away from relationships that require me to diminish myself. Emma's wedding taught me that. James helped me understand it. And my life now, full of students who adore me, a partner who cherishes me, friends who truly see me, proves it every single day. Sometimes the worst moments crack us open to reveal who we really are. Emma's wedding broke me, but in that breaking, I found myself, not the shadow of a golden sister, but Maya Hartley, whole and worthy and wonderfully, defiantly myself. And that, in the end, is the sweetest revenge of all.